Hello, welcome. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the three Spider-Men. The three different actors playing Spider-Man: Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. And we're going to be comparing them to find out who is or was the best Spider-Man. And we're going to be comparing them in a couple ways. And mainly, we're going to have a look at the films as well, and the people that made the films and who else was involved in the films, like the villains and stuff, and all the side characters. But we're mainly going to be looking at how each of them played Spider-Man and each of them played Peter Parker. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, we have the original, Tobey Maguire. And obviously he was the first one to do anything, directed by Sam Raimi, who was known for Evil Dead back in the 80s. He returned with this, with the Spider-Man trilogy. And we have famously great films in the first couple, and a famously not so great film in the third one. Now, though in the modern day we may see Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man as just a bit of a meme, but in actuality, when you rewatch these movies, you realize that they are pretty damn great for, quite a while ago now. There is some not so great CGI, but I think that can be excused for the fact that it was in the early days of proper use of CGI, so they were still kind of getting into it. I don't really class until about after 2010 when you can say, okay, that was bad CGI. I think before that you kind of have to give them a little bit of a break and say, okay, it was early days for it. But for Tobey himself, gotta love him. He was a real character, to say the least. And I think he had a really good balance, to be honest. He had a good balance between sort of being the badass Spider-Man and being sort of the nerdy idiot, and he's probably the most nerdy and unlikable as Peter Parker, but he's also the fact that he was like that also makes him the most sort of relatable and sad, really. You have these moments where he is upset because something horrible's happened to him, and it's probably the only time in all the Spider-Man films, when he loses someone, when Tobey Maguire has lost someone like that you really feel the emotion, while in the Garfield films and Holland as well, you don't feel that as much. But he did a really, really great job. And for the films themselves, having Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, fantastic choice, and you had Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, another great one, and Topher Grace as well as Venom. Okay, it wasn't great, but I actually like Topher Grace, but I just think he just got dealt the short straw in that regard. Then you had Sandman as well, and obviously Franco's Green Goblin too in the third one. But the first couple films are definitely the stronger ones, and I'd say Tobey's was the best Peter Parker if it wasn't for the third film, which unfortunately he played that weird emo type, but attractive, strange, like I don't think anyone even knows what that was. Like, it was just the weirdest goddamn thing. But yeah, it happened, and unfortunately that's made him lose a few points. But yeah, no, I like him. I feel like he's likable as Peter Parker, and he's great as Spider-Man, and he really made an identity for Spider-Man, because what he really did well was that difference between Peter Parker and Spider-Man. You really felt like as soon as he put on that suit and he became Spider-Man, he wanted to be that hero. And it's very noticeable, especially in the third film, actually, which you can say is a bad film, but it's not that bad. And I like the fact that, like, at the beginning when there's the parade and he kisses Gwen Stacy, because he's in Spider-Man mode and he's obsessed with the fact that he can be Spider-Man and he can escape his life as Peter Parker. In that regard, he did an amazing job, and he's the funniest, he's the most likable, I think. He's just a good laugh, and when you look back at it, you just think, damn, Tobey, you know what, I like you. You did a really good job. So yeah, that's the summary for Tobey for now. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, so next up, we have Andrew Garfield. I think this is probably the least to say about his portrayal, because these were definitely not great movies, especially the second one. Yeah, pretty poor. But the first one I quite liked. But what I think makes these films good, what is their redeeming quality, is not Garfield playing Peter Parker, but Garfield playing Spider-Man. I feel like this was kind of prime time for Spider-Man because they still had that sort of grittiness of like early 2000s superhero films. So they had that, and they also had good CGI, really good CGI actually. Like, he looks amazing, Spider-Man on the screen in these films. You can't deny that. And I love his design as well. I think out of all of the films, his design in Amazing Spider-Man, I think, is my favorite. It's quite sort of, sleek and what you kind of think Spider-Man would look like. So yeah, that was really good. But what holds Garfield's performance back is definitely the fact that he is an awful Peter Parker, and he was too cool. Like, he was really nerdy one minute, but in a weird way, and then next up he's like this cool, sleek badass. Like, I don't know, I just didn't feel it. Like, Tobey Maguire played that better than he did, like the transformation, and Tobey understood that. Okay, I'm sort of a badass. Okay, I can be a badass when I'm Spider-Man. Well, Garfield, I feel like, was like, okay, I'm a badass now. Now Peter Parker's a badass and Spider-Man's a badass. Which I didn't feel like worked as well. And that's what brought the films down. The director, was it Mark Webb? Did a good, decent job. I'm pretty sure he's the guy that did 500 Days of Summer, which is a great film. So yeah, it was a good films, but it definitely falls short. And I feel like what also didn't work for these was unfortunate villains. They were all good actors, but they just didn't feel it, especially in the second one. Jamie Foxx's was just sort of weak, and then I did not like the portrayal of the Green Goblin. And then also you had the Rhino just at the end. They advertised the hell out of the Rhino. I remember that. They were like, "Oh, the Rhino's in this." No, he's in it for about 5 seconds right at the end. What, like, that was so stupid. But it was really good in a few senses, and it was very impactful what happened to Gwen in the second film, and then what happened to her dad in the first. So in that regard, they had some meaning behind it all. And I feel like Garfield did play the sort of emotional side very well, because he's a very good actor. He's probably the best actor out of the three, I think. But I don't think Peter Parker is the perfect role for him. But I think Spider-Man is, and that's what works so well. But the films as a whole, definitely a low point, unfortunately. So yeah, that's them. Okay, and then lastly, I'm going to be looking at the modern day Spider-Man with his debut back in 2017, Tom Holland. Someone who I definitely am probably not the greatest fan of, but I can appreciate him. Now, what annoys me is the MCU. I don't hate the MCU, but I don't like the fact that they just push the MCU rather than the actual stories. Like, I think it was smart that in Homecoming they moved away from the whole Uncle Ben dying storyline and him becoming Spider-Man through that. I like this, the new way that they did it, but also, like, they were still, instead of focusing on Spider-Man, I feel like it was too much. Okay, Spider-Man, you're now one of the MCU. You're not Spider-Man, you're one of the MCU. We're just gonna leave you on the back burner for a bit, which I don't feel like was great. But as a whole, Homecoming was actually a really great film. I really enjoyed it, and one of its definite strong points was the bad guy. The Vulture was hands down the best Spider-Man villain we've seen, and that's because Michael Keaton pulled it out the bag and played to his strengths totally. And he was such a relatable villain as well, and I love the story behind it all, because it's so simple, and that turn, it turns out that the girl that Peter Parker liked was actually the Vulture's daughter, which nobody saw coming. I thought that was crazy. I remember when he opens the door and there's that reveal, I was like, damn, they did a good one with this. That's one of the best turns they've done in the whole of the MCU. So yeah, it was actually a very good film. It was. And I like Tom Holland as Peter Parker. But I hate him as Spider-Man. I feel like he's by far the worst Spider-Man, just because he doesn't let go of Peter Parker. Tom Holland plays a really good nerdy Peter Parker. and yeah, he's just got a couple friends, and he's just sort of he's more interested in himself, and you know, all the nerdy stuff that he likes to do, and you know, he's a nice guy, but he's nothing special, and I like that about how he portrayed him. I really did. But Spider-Man doesn't seem to let that go. As Spider-Man, he still seems unsure of himself, and he still talks and acts like he's Peter Parker, which I hate. It just like sends shivers down my spine. Like, why is he doing that? Like, just be a badass like the other two did. Like, you're Spider-Man now. So for that, for me, it kind of ruins it. Then we also have Far From Home, which is an awful movie. Say what you want and be like, oh my god, but that film was actually amazing. It really wasn't. And for them to hire someone like Jake Gyllenhaal, who is one of the best actors of, you know, this generation, and completely butcher him, because he can play almost anything, but he can't stop bad writing. Like, Mysterio was just awkward, I felt, and that bar scene with the reveal, oh goodness, like, just the writing in that, and the way he comes out with it all, I was just cringing. I was cringing when I watched that in cinema. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It's on par with me for the Spider-Man 3 emo bit. Like, if anything, it's worse. Like, jeez, I hated that. Absolutely hated it. And also the whole thing with like the projectors, and that was what Mysterio was doing. I don't know, I didn't really feel like that was realistic. Like, okay, he's made these holograms that adapt to what Spider-Man does within them. I'm not sure I quite get that. So, yeah, like, they can be holograms, but, you know, there are people moving throughout, what the holograms adapt to that, or I don't feel like that's in any way possible. Like, it's still set in modern day. We're not, I know it's a fantasy world, but if you're using technology like that, I don't know, it just felt a bit far-fetched. And people were like, oh, well, there was cool scenes, like when he gets put under, what was it, like the gas or whatever, and he starts tripping Spider-Man. But I thought it was cool, but it's not something I haven't seen before in films. Like, it didn't blow my mind. I feel like other films have done it way better. I was like, alright, yeah, okay, this is alright, but I don't know, it just felt like a really weak film, and I don't know, it just really fell short compared to Homecoming, and that's mainly because Keaton wasn't there, and also the fact that I don't like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. So yeah, that was unfortunate, and again, too stuck in the MCU thing. But as a whole, yeah, they were alright. Okay, now we've come to the end. So we've spoken all about the 3 different Spider-Men, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rank them as Peter Parker, and I'm going to rank them as Spider-Man. So if they're at the top, they get 2 points, if they're second, they get 1 point, and if they're third, they get 0 points. And we'll add them up, and then they're the best. Okay, I'm going to start with Peter Parker, and I'm going to rank third, Andrew Garfield, second, Tom Holland, and of course first, Tobey Maguire. And then for Spider-Man, I'm going to rank third, Tom Holland, second, Tobey Maguire, and first, Andrew Garfield. Now, I know everyone's going to have different opinions, but that's what I think. So overall, Tobey Maguire wins. He is hands down the best. They're the best films. And then I've put Garfield in second because I really think he is an amazing Spider-Man. I really do. I really enjoy him as Spider-Man. But as a whole, I would say, even though I put Tom Holland third, I would rather watch Homecoming than any of the Amazing Spider-Man films. So for the films themselves, I think Tom Holland comes out overall better, but I feel like his performance, because I'm ranking them themselves, his performance is the weakest. That's what I feel. And Maguire wins. He's the best. He always will be. Potentially, unless someone beats him. But yeah, he's amazing. I feel like he just got everything right. He got the balance. That's what he got. He had the balance. And that was what was good. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I've enjoyed making this. And be sure to check out my other videos. Thank you.